Hello, this is Morel Bernard with the continuing story of Wuthering Heights. And please, by the way, please subscribe and please share these videos. Much appreciated, really much appreciated. Okay, thank you. Last words were, Nellie, do you never dream queer dreams? She said, suddenly after some minutes' reflection. Yes, now and then, I answered. And so do I. I've dreamt in my life dreams that have stayed with me ever after and changed my ideas. They've gone through and through me like wine through water and alter the colour of my mind. And this is one. I'm going to tell it. But take care not to smile at any part of it. Oh, don't, Miss Catherine, I cried. We're dismal enough without conjuring up ghosts and visions to perplex us. Come, be merry, and like yourself. Look at little Harrington. He's dreaming, nothing dreary. How sweetly he smiles in his sleep. Yes, and how sweetly his father curses in his solitude. You remember him, I dare say, when he was just such another as that chubby thing, nearly as young and innocent. However, Nellie, I shall oblige you to listen. It's not long, and I've no power to be merry tonight. I won't hear it, I repeated hastily. I was superstitious about dreams then, and am still. And Catherine had an unusual gloom in her aspect that made me dread something from which I might shape a prophecy and foresee a fearful catastrophe. She was vexed, but she did not proceed. Apparently, taking up another subject, she recommenced in a short time. If I were in heaven, Nellie, I should be extremely miserable. Because you are not fit to go there, I answered. All sinners would be miserable in heaven. But it is not for that. I dreamt once that I was there. I tell you, I won't hearken to your dreams, Miss Catherine. I'll go to bed. I interrupted again. She laughed and held me down, for I made a motion to leave my chair. This is nothing, cried she. I was only going to say that heaven did not seem to be my home, and I broke my heart with weeping to come back to earth, and the angels were so angry that they flung me out into the middle of the heath, on the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke, sobbing for joy. That will do to explain my secret, as well as the other. I've no more business to marry Edgar Linton than I have to be in heaven. And if the wicked man in there had not brought Heathcliff so low, I shouldn't have thought of it. It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now, so he shall never know how I love him, and that, not because he's handsome, Nellie, but because he's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same, and Linton's is as different as a moonbeam from lightning or frost from fire. Ere the speech ended, I became sensible of Heathcliff's presence. Having noticed a slight movement, I turned my head and saw him rise from the bench and steal out noiselessly. He had listened till he heard Catherine say it would degrade her to marry him, and then he stayed to hear no further. My companion, sitting on the ground, was prevented by the back of the settle from remarking his presence or departure, but I started and bade her hush. Why? She asked, gazing nervously round. Joseph is here, I answered, catching opportunely the roll of his cartwheels up the road, and Heathcliff will come in with him. I'm not sure whether he were not at the door this moment. Oh, he couldn't overhear me at the door, said she. Give me Harrington while you get the supper, and when it is ready, ask me to sup with you. I want to cheat my uncomfortable conscience and be convinced that Heathcliff has no notion of these things. He has not, has he? He does not know what being in love is. I see no reason that he should not know as well as you, I returned. And if you are his choice, he'll be the most unfortunate creature that ever was born. As soon as you become Mrs. Linton, he loses friend and love and all. Have you considered how you'll bear the separation, and how he'll bear to be quite deserted in the world? Because, Miss Catherine, he quite deserted. We separated, she exclaimed, with an accent of indignation. Who is to separate us, pray? They'll meet the fate of Milo, not as long as I live, Ellen, for no mortal creature. Every Linton on the face of the earth might melt into nothing before I could consent to forsake Heathcliff. Oh, that's not what I intend. That's not what I mean. I shouldn't be Mrs. Linton were such a price demanded. He'll be as much to me as he has been all his lifetime. Edgar must shake off his antipathy and tolerate him at least. He will, when he learns my true feelings towards him. Nellie, I see now you think me as a selfish wretch. But did it never strike you that if Heathcliff and I married, we should be beggars? Whereas if I marry Linton, I can aid Heathcliff to rise and place him out of my brother's power. With your husband's money, Miss Catherine? I asked. You'll find him not so pliable as you calculate upon, and though I'm hardly a judge, I think that's the worst motive you've given yet for being the wife of young Linton. It is not, retorted she. It is the best. The others were the satisfactions of my whims, and for Edgar's sake, too, to satisfy him. This is for the sake of one who comprehends in his person my feelings to Edgar and myself. I cannot express it, but surely you and everybody have a notion that there is or should be an existence of yours beyond you. What were the use of my creation if I were entirely contained here? My great miseries in this world have been Heathcliff's miseries, and I watched and felt each from the beginning. My great thought in living is himself. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be, and if all else remained and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. I should not seem a part of it. My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it. I'm well aware, as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being. So don't talk of our separation again. It's impracticable. And she paused and hid her face in the folds of my gown, but I jerked it forcibly away. I was out of patience with her folly. If I can make any sense of your nonsense, miss, I said, it only goes to convince me that you are ignorant of the duties you undertake in marrying, or else that you are a wicked, unprincipled girl. But trouble me with no more secrets. I'll not promise to keep them. You'll keep that? She asked eagerly. No, I'll not promise, I repeated. She was about to insist when the entrance of Joseph finished our conversation, and Catherine removed her seat to a corner and nursed Harrington while I made the supper. After it was cooked, my fellow servant and I began to quarrel who should carry some to Mr. Hindley, and we didn't settle it till all was nearly cold. Then we came to the agreement that we would let him ask if he wanted any, for we feared particularly to go into his presence when he had been some time alone. And how isn't that now coming in from the field be this time? What is he about? Go out and see, demanded the old man, looking round for Heathcliff. I'll call him, I replied. He's in the barn, I've no doubt. I went and called, but got no answer. On returning, I whispered to Catherine that he had heard a good part of what she said, I was sure, and told how I saw him quit the kitchen just as she complained of her brother's conduct regarding him. She jumped up in a fine fright, flung Harrington onto the settle, and ran to seek for her friend herself, not taking leisure to consider why she was so flurried or how her talk would have affected him. She was absent such a while that Joseph proposed we should wait no longer. He cunningly conjectured they were staying away in order to avoid hearing his protracted blessing. They were ill enough for only manners, he affirmed. And on their behalf he added that neither special prayer to the usual quarter of an hour's supplication before meat, and would have tacked another to the end of the grace, had not his young mistress broken in upon him with 100 command that he must run down the road, and wherever Heathcliff had rambled, find and make him re-enter directly. I want to speak to him, and I must. Before I go upstairs, she said. And the gate is open. He's somewhere out of hearing, for he would not reply, though I shouted at the top of the fold as loud as I could. Joseph objected at first. She was too much in earnest, however, to suffer contradiction, and at last he placed his hat on his head and walked, grumbling, forth. Meantime, Catherine paced up and down the floor, exclaiming, I wonder where he is. I wonder where he can be. What did I say, Nellie? I've forgotten. Was he vexed at my bad humour this afternoon? Dear, tell me what I've said to grieve him. I do wish he'd come. I do wish he would. What a noise for nothing, I cried, though rather uneasy myself. What a trifle scares you. It's surely no great cause of alarm that Heathcliff should take a moonlight saunter on the moors, or even lie too sulky to speak to us in the hayloft. I'll engage he's lurking there. See if I don't ferret him out. I departed to renew my search. Its result was disappointment, and Joseph's quest ended in the same. Yon lad gets war on war, observed he on re-entering. He's left the gate at the full swing, and Miss Pony has trodden down the rigs of corn and plotted through. Ride you over the meadow. Handsome diver, master'll play, devil to mourn, and he'll do well. He's patient, since careless of foul craters. Patience itself he is. But he's not to be so alas, see, you must drive him out of his head for now. Have you found him, Heathcliff? You ask? Interrupted Catherine. Have you been looking for him, as I ordered? I said more like a look for the horse, he replied. It ought to have more sense, but I can look no norther, horse nor man, or nape, as black as a chimney, and Heathcliff's not chap to come at my whistle. Happen he's left the hard of hearing. It was a very dark evening for summer. The clouds appeared inclined to thunder, and I said we had better all sit down. The approaching rain would be certain to bring him home without further trouble. However, Catherine would not be persuaded into tranquillity. She kept wandering to and fro from the gate to the door in a state of agitation which permitted no repose, and at length took up a permanent situation on one side of the wall near the road, where, heedless of my expostulations and the growling thunder and the great drops that began to plash around her, she remained, calling at intervals, and then listening, and then crying outright. She beat Harrington or any child at a good passionate fit of crying. About midnight, while we still sat up, the storm came rattling over the heights in full fury. There was a violent wind, as well as thunder, and either one or the other split a tree off at the corner of the building. A huge bough fell across the roof and knocked down a portion of the east chimney stack, sending a clatter of stones and soot into the kitchen fire. We thought a bolt had fallen in the middle of us, and Joseph swung onto his knees, beseeching the Lord to remember the patriarchs Noah and Lot, and as in former times spare the righteous, though he smote the ungodly. I felt some sentiment that it must be judgment on us all. The Jonah in my mind was Mr. Earnshaw, and I shook the handle of his den that I might ascertain if he were yet living. He replied, audibly enough in a fashion which made my companion vociferate more clamorously than before, that a wide distinction might be drawn between saints like himself and sinners like his master. But the uproar passed away in 20 minutes, leaving us all unharmed, excepting Cathy, who got thoroughly drenched for her obstinacy in refusing to take shelter and standing bonnetless and shoreless to catch as much water as she could with her hair and clothes. She came in and lay down on the settle, all soaked as she was, turning her face to the back and putting her hands before it. "Well, miss," I exclaimed, touching her shoulder, "you are not bent on getting your death, are you? Do you know what o'clock it is?" "12:30. Come to bed. There's no use waiting any longer on that foolish boy. He'll be gone to Gymington, and he'll stay there now. He guesses we shouldn't wait for him till this late hour, at least. He guesses that only Mr. Hindley would be up, and he'd rather avoid having the door opened by the master. Nay, he's known at Gymington," said Joseph. "I never wondered but he's at the bottom of a bog-hole. This visitation warned for now, and I would have it to look out. Monsieur must be next. Thank heaven for all. All walks together for good to them as chosen, and picked out from the rubbish. You know the scripture says." And he began quoting several texts, referring us to chapters and verses where we might find them. I, having vainly begged the wilful girl to rise and remove her wet things, left him preaching and her shivering, and betook myself to bed with little Harrington, who slept as fast as if everyone had been sleeping round him. I heard Joseph read on a while afterwards. Then I distinguished his slow step on the ladder, and then I dropped asleep. Coming down somewhat later than usual, I saw by the sunbeams piercing the chinks of the shutters Miss Catherine still seated near the fireplace. The house door was ajar too. Light entered from its unclosed windows. Hindley had come out and stood on the kitchen hearth, haggard and drowsy. "What ails you, Cathy?" he was saying when I entered. "You look as dismal as a drowned whelp. Why are you so damp and pale, child?" "I've been wet," she answered reluctantly, "and I'm cold, that's all." "Oh, she's naughty," I cried, perceiving the master to be tolerable sober. She got steeped in the shower of yesterday evening, and there she has sat the night through, and I couldn't prevail on her to stir." Mr. Earnshaw stared at us in surprise. "The night through?" he repeated. "What kept her up? Not fear of the thunder, surely? That was over hours since." Neither of us wished to mention Heathcliff's absence as long as we could conceal it, so I replied, "I didn't know how she took it into her head to sit up." And she said nothing. The morning was fresh and cool. I threw back the lattice, and presently the room filled with sweet scents from the garden. But Catherine called peevishly to me, "Ellen, shut the window. I'm starving." And her teeth shattered as she shrank closer to the almost extinguished embers. "She's ill," said Hindley, taking her wrist. "I suppose that's the reason she would not go to bed. Damn it, I don't want to be troubled with more sickness here. What took you into the rain?" "Running after the lads as usual," croaked Joseph, catching an opportunity from our hesitation to thrust in his evil tongue. "If I was you, mister, I'd just slam the boards, their faces, all of them, gentle and simple. Never a day to yar off, but yon Cato Linton comes sneaking hither, and Miss Nelly's shoes a fine lass. She's sitting watching for you, kitchen, and you're all at one door, he's out at the other, and then where grand lady goes a-courting of her side. It's bonny behaviour lurking amongst the fields after 12 at night. What for? Flaysome devil of a gypsy Heathcliff. They think I'm blind, but I'm not. Nowt the sort. I seed young Linton both coming and going, and I seed ye," directing his discourse to me, "you're good for nothing. Slading witch, nip up and bolt the house the minute you heard Master Horsefit clatter up the road." "Silence, eavesdropper," cried Catherine. "None of your insolence before me. Edgar Linton came yesterday by chance, Hindley, and it was I who told him to be off, because I knew you would not like to have met him as you were." "You lie, Cathy, no doubt," answered her brother, "and you are a confounded simpleton. But never mind Linton at present. Tell me, were you not with Heathcliff last night? Speak the truth now. You need not be afraid of harming him, though I hate him as much as ever. He did me a good turn a short time since that will make my conscience tender of breaking his neck. To prevent it, I shall send him about his business this very morning. And after he's gone, I'd advise you all to look sharp. I shall only have the more humour for you." "I never saw Heathcliff last night," answered Catherine, beginning to sob bitterly. "And if you do turn him out of doors, I'll go with him. But perhaps you'll never have an opportunity. Perhaps he's gone." Here she burst into uncontrollable grief, and the remainder of her words were inarticulate. Join me for the next video of Wuthering Heights. Join me for the next video of Wuthering Heights with me, Morel. I'll see you then. Bye.